The road to opioid addiction and recovery is not the same for everyone. 3 people share stories of their journey.
The first time I got high was at 10 years old, and it was marijuana. And I remember actually being at a pizzeria and smoking a joint and being so wasted that I actually had to lay on the table in the pizzeria because I was so out of myself. I started going to the dentist, and this was when I was in middle school and high school. And I remember getting prescription medication, and that started with the Vicodin and the Percocets. And that started my addiction to opiates, which became my drug of choice, heroin. It was great at that age, but I had no idea where it was gonna lead. And it was the gateway drug for me. And it was the beginning of what was gonna become a very dark road. And eventually I got sentenced to prison. I remember saying to myself, I am never gonna use again. Like, this is it. This is my bottom. And it wasn't.
I wasn't really thinking about the potential consequences that could happen. I was genuinely convinced that these pills, I'm gonna be able to manage this use and that nothing bad is gonna come of it. I didn't realize that in a short period of time, I'd be a heroin addict. I always picture myself to be a professional soccer player, and if it wasn't professional soccer, it would be going to one of the best schools in the country, like an Ivy League school. I had a surgery when I was 16 years old, and the doctor prescribed me Percocet after the surgery. All of a sudden, I feel like I'm on top of the world. When I started to abuse it was when I was at my grandmother's house, and I knew that she had opiates in her medicine cabinet. It was my first experience with crushing down a pill and snorting it. And the first time that I took it, I pretty much passed out for about 3 hours. And I woke up and my girlfriend was next to me and she's like, "What happened to you?" I think the most torturous part is the mental aspect. It's the only thing that my brain is fixated on. So I did not care about what I had to do to get more pills. I didn't care who I had to lie to. My parents did not trust me anymore. I was stealing from them. I was always asking my friends for money. So after a while, they wanted nothing to do with me.
I'm from Middlesex County, small town. I was a happy kid, but I was an angry kid. Didn't know why. Always felt like the black sheep of my family. I didn't feel that I had many people I could talk to. I didn't feel comfortable opening up. I didn't feel comfortable showing my true emotions, that I was sad and I was angry. I thought that was a weakness if you showed that or if you asked for help.
A lot of times there's this emotional thing going on that's creating the feelings, being angry, being sad, being down, until that drug came along and hits that pleasure center in the brain, and lo and behold, they're finding themselves feeling so much better than they ever did before. And up until that time, their norm was all they knew.
My first experience with alcohol was when I was 8 years old. I found drugs in prescription drugs. When I gave birth to my son 14 years ago, I had a C-section, and I had my first real spin with Percocet. It came to the point where my ex-husband actually hid the Percocet. Then when that prescription went out, I found street opiates, pills, blues, Vicodin. In 2011, I tried heroin for the first time. And I called my mother and said, I really have a problem. It gave me control of my day-to-day life. It gave me control of being happy all the time, not thinking about wanting to kill myself, not thinking about just crawling up in a bed, not thinking about my son, not thinking about anything. But when I didn't and I couldn't get high anymore, then you go through the withdrawals, which is constantly sick. Like, you just wanted to be in bed, you were achy, it's worse than having the flu, and you don't know how to fix it.
There is a protracted withdrawal that occurs. That's not out of your system in 24 hours. It's not out of your system in a year. The brain chemistry holds on to it, it becomes attached to the receptors in the brain, and it lasts.
Hitting bottom is the first step toward recovery.
Rock bottom for me was me in my apartment, and I lived in Garfield, and I had my little girl. She was almost a year old, and I was so sick, and I had to take her with me to go to buy drugs. The Bergen County Sheriff's Department came to my house and came through my doors. My last vision of my little girl was me getting taken out in an ambulance on a stretcher, and all I could see is her little hair flying all over the place, and her in the front seat with her father in the cop car, and she was scratching her dad's face, screaming for me. And that was my bottom.
Rock bottom for me looked like waking up every morning in my college dorm room, being drenched in sweat, totally very, very sick, flu-like symptoms, and just obsessing about how I can get heroin today. It didn't matter to me who I had to steal from, who I had to rob, who I had to harm in order to get the heroin. And I would say to myself, there's no hope for you, Nick. You're gonna die. Because I wanted to ask my parents for help, but I couldn't do it. I was too scared to.
And the last time I used heroin, I ended up going into a psych ward, and they said that IOP doesn't want you back. Nowhere wants you back, so they gave me a grant to come up to Paterson, New Jersey, to Turning Point. Well, I didn't make that because I drank the night before, and I was honest, and I did cocaine the night before, and I took my mother's Valium the night before. I got out on May 14th. I missed my son's first Holy Communion. My mother wouldn't talk to me. She wouldn't send me my clothes. The best thing she could have ever done was get in her car and go back to Middlesex County, and that's what she did. And although I hated her for that, it's the best thing she could have ever done. She couldn't do it anymore. She saw me dying. There's nothing she could have done. My son could have sat in front of me and I still would have went in the bathroom and used. I still would have drank, no matter what. It didn't matter. I didn't want to exist anymore.
Starting the recovery process opens the door to a new beginning.
For me, that day was the worst day that led me to the best day of my life. Because from that day forward, recovery set in. I got arrested. I woke up in jail. My daughter was taken. I lost my apartment. They repossessed my car. And I went to jail and I detoxed for 2 straight months on no bail. This was my 3rd child removed. I was never willing to do the work that I needed to do to get the help that I needed to get. And in that desperation, I became willing. I never hit the street. I went straight from jail to Turning Point, straight into Springhouse. And Springhouse was my saving grace.
You know, when I was finally honest with my family about the stuff that I was doing in my active addiction, my dad's response to it was to say, I haven't had a son since you were 15 years old. The moment he said that, I was very hurt. Because up to that time period, I really didn't understand the actual effect that I had on him. Because he was always in denial and he didn't want to believe that I had a problem. And I didn't really think that he was hurt by anything that I did. But when he said that to me, I was totally taken aback. I started to cry. And it's really, at the end of the day, what made me make the decision to follow through with working a program of recovery, was that conversation.
After that rehab piece, people think they're cured, they're not. Honestly, especially with the opiates, their brains, they're not even ready yet to deal with the life issues that they've encountered.
I was here for 8 months before anything clicked, before I could think. They taught me how to live a whole different life and showed me how to look in the mirror and not want to smash the mirror. Every morning I wake up. I thank God that I wake up. Thank God for another day sober.
Recovery means sharing experience, strength, and hope to let others know what is possible.
The insight and the gifts that I've gone through that dark path helped me bring the light into others today. And that is the best gift ever. And that is why my life is so full. So to the women who are out partying in the club and using, be careful, because my life started with use, led to abuse, and ended up dependence and addicted and in a very dark place. And the willingness to get help was what saved my life.
I think that growing up, I always had this sense that I wasn't good enough, that whatever I did wasn't good enough. And to be able to really recognize that and to accept myself for who I am today and be okay with that and to move forward in terms of being able to build on my character, that acceptance process for me was absolutely vital. Finally, for the first time, I was able to make amends to my family and to really apologize for all the things that I've done to hurt them. And when they sensed my willingness to actually change and they've seen me change, they trust me now. They trust me, and they're able to come to me with their problems in terms of how do I deal with this. And so there's real intimacy with my family today where there wasn't in the past. The man that I am today is one that's very happy and joyous and free from this addiction. I'm very confident with myself. I can finally go anywhere and do anything that I want to without being fearful of having a drink or to get high, and to really just enjoy life. If you are a loved one or struggling with addiction, just know that there is hope for you. I didn't think there was ever hope for me, but when the right people intervened on me, I realized that there was hope and that there's something that you can do as well. Whenever you're ready, I'm here for you. There's so many people available for you, your family. Ask them for help. You're not gonna regret it.
For anyone in recovery like I am, hold on, the pain ends, and you're not alone. That's one thing I always want to stress is you're not alone, because you're not.
Sharing personal stories helps eliminate the stigma of addiction and inspires others to make positive change for a healthier future. For help with addiction in New Jersey, contact the Addictions Access Center at 1-844-276-2777. Outside New Jersey, call the Addiction Hotline at 1-800-238-2333 or your local Department of Health.